Wildcard weekend is in the books, and it is time to shift our focus to the divisional round. 8 teams remaining in the quest for New Orleans. I am Johnny Sports Network, here to provide you with my picks for the divisional round. And last week in the wildcard round, it was a lot like the wildcard weekend from last year. Only one game entertaining from start to finish. Commanders and Buccaneers. Without a doubt, the game of the week last week. All other 5 of the games, they just felt like they were just dragged on. Despite a couple of them being close at halftime, as time took place in the second half, they just became runaway games. But historically, the divisional round is always better. Who will advance to championship weekend? Before we get to the picks, there are a couple of coaching news stories that I'd like to discuss that took place this week. The Patriots have named Mike Vrabel their next head coach, and this felt pretty obvious. I was about 80% certain that Mike Vrabel was going to be the next head coach as soon as it was revealed that they parted ways with Jerod Mayo. There is no doubt in my mind that the Patriots, they wanted Mike Vrabel last year. However, once we did get the news that they were parting ways with Bill Belichick and that Bill Belichick and the Patriots, they mutually agreed to part ways, we got an announcement a couple of days later that Jerod Mayo would be the next head coach. And I feel like out of respect for Bill Belichick, Robert Kraft just said, okay, we'll make Jerod Mayo the head coach, knowing that Robert Kraft would set up Jerod Mayo for failure, which that is really what happened if you ask me. Because it's not necessarily normal to part ways with a head coach after just one season, but it does happen. For those of you that do view my content regularly, I have expressed time and time again that I find there's little to no upside to have a defensive mind as a head coach in today's NFL. However, Mike Vrabel, I think, is one of those few that I think could still find success being a defensive-minded guy in today's NFL. We also got news that the Cowboys announced that they're not going to bring back Mike McCarthy for next season, as Mike McCarthy's contract was set to end today, if I remember correctly. But what doesn't make sense is, why would the Cowboys decline the Bears' request to interview him just for a few days later to say he's not coming back next season? That's what I don't get. However, we did get news last night that Jerry Jones and Deion Sanders have interacted about Deion Sanders' desire to become the next Cowboys coach. And I am very curious to see if something like this really does play out. Because seeing Deion Sanders' personality at Colorado, he is not going to be somebody that's just going to be a yes man for Jerry Jones. I really do think if Deion Sanders becomes the next Cowboys coach, I do feel like part of that deal is going to be trade Dak Prescott and draft his son Shador, and then draft his other son Shiloh later on in the draft this April. I do expect that we are going to get some more updates on this within the next couple of days, and when we do, I will make a YouTube short about it. Without further ado, let's get to the picks for the divisional round of the NFL playoffs right here on the Johnny Sports Network. Texans and Chiefs to begin the divisional round. And this is a rematch from Week 16, where the Chiefs won 27-19. This was the game where the Texans lost Tank Dell for the season, and it was later reported that Tank Dell could be out for the 2025 season as well. And Week 16 was a game the Texans were in when Tank Dell, he was injured after he scored the touchdown, and then the next thing you know, a missed extra point. And not only was that the turning point in the game, but it was a turning point for the Texans season until last week in the wild card round, where the offense just couldn't get anything going. They were shut out by the Ravens the very next week on Christmas Day. The starters, they did play for the first part of the game. They did score a touchdown offensively in Week 18 before they were rested the rest of the game. And last week in the wild card round, they were down 6-0 in the second quarter. The offense wasn't generating any offense. The defense is keeping them in the game. But then C.J. Stroud connected with Nico Collins for a massive gain in a play that should have been a fumble, but that was the momentum the Texans needed. And the Texans, they ultimately dominated the rest of the game, outscoring the Chargers 32-6 after being down 6-0. And for the Texans to win this game and to take the Chiefs' plot armor away from them, their defense will have to have another performance like that this week. 4 interceptions by the Texans defense last week. The Chiefs, they did rest their starters in Week 18, and they had the bye week last week. So the Chiefs starters, they have had 2 weeks off essentially. And Andy Reid, we know what he is capable of when he has a bye week to prepare. And I rarely talk about referee assignments, if I ever do. But Clay Martin will be the main official for this game. And it's important to note that the Chiefs are 6-0 when Clay Martin is the official. Also something to keep in mind. The Chiefs, they are favored by about 8.5 points right now. Do I think the Texans could cover? I really do think they could. And we are also going to talk about the other one seed in the playoffs, the Lions, coming up next. They're also an overwhelming favorite. The Chiefs, they have yet to score more than 31 points in a game this season, which that is very hard to believe given what we've gotten used to seeing from the Chiefs in years past. But worst case scenario here, the Chiefs, they're going to somehow find a way to win like they have so many times before. Plus they have the plot armor. The Chiefs, I do think they move on. Commanders and Lions. The Commanders, they enter this game off an emotional victory over the Buccaneers. An upset victory with a game-winning field goal by Zane Gonzalez. And they go on the road to take on a Lions team that is on a mission. And the big storyline for the Lions this season has been, how do they respond after a heartbreaking loss in last year's NFC Championship game in a game where they could have won and arguably probably should have won. As mentioned a moment ago, the Lions are an overwhelming favorite this week, a 9.5 point favorite. The Lions, they have gotten some good news in recent weeks. The Lions, they have been a team that has been riddled with injuries this season. Despite that, the Lions, they continued to be resilient all throughout the season. David Montgomery is slated to return for the Lions this week. And also, if the Lions were to advance to the NFC Championship game, Aiden Hutchinson could return for the Lions. The Commanders enter this game on a 6-game winning streak. And if the Commanders were to pull off the upset and shock the world and upset the Lions, it will be because Jaden Daniels, he was able to extend plays. As Jaden Daniels, he is a much different quarterback in the fourth quarter, as we have seen time after time after time again this season. And no matter who wins this game, I do anticipate that they will be rooting for whoever wins in the NFC Championship game next week, as these are two teams that they are very rootable teams. Even if you are a fan of somebody that is in their division. And I have been saying for about 8 to 10 weeks now that the Lions, I think, are the only team who can prevent the Chiefs from three-peating. I've been saying that a lot throughout the year, and I just do feel like this is another game in the playoffs where experience will matter. Knowing how motivated and angry the Lions are. And I was a bit worried about the Lions going into the year because they had a season that nobody really saw coming, but then the next season, it's what do you have after that? Because once we see a team that has an under-the-radar season, we expect that the next year. And the Lions, they were the number one seed in the NFC. They have shown lots of improvement on the defense side of the ball. A team riddled by injuries, but continue to be resilient. I think the Lions, they take advantage of being the more experienced team in this game, and they move on to the NFC Championship game. While for the Commanders, I do think that if Cliff Kingsbury sticks around, I do think they could make some noise next season, but I do think Cliff Kingsbury, he could be a head coach somewhere else in 2025. We'll have to wait and see. Another conversation for another day, but the Lions, they move on. Up next, we have the Rams and the Eagles. And this is another rematch from earlier in the year. We saw this matchup in LA where the Eagles won 37-20. A dominant night for the Eagles and a dominant night for Saquon Barkley as well. It was a career night for him. 255 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. And they always say it is tough to beat the same team twice in one season. Last week we saw the Rams dominate against the Vikings in a game where experience clearly was going to matter. As a big reason why I picked the Rams to win last week to pull off the upset was, you know who knew that people would side with the Vikings, given that the Vikings had 14 wins on the year. But it was Sam Darnold's first start in the playoffs, and Matthew Stafford and the Rams, they have had recent playoff experience. And that is what came into play in that game and why the Rams were able to dominate that game. And now they go on the road to Philadelphia. The one place where I've been saying for the last few weeks is a place you don't want to go to during the playoffs. As we have seen a couple of times in recent years, how advantageous it is for the Eagles to have home field advantage. As the Philadelphia in the playoffs, it turns into the most hostile environment in the league. The Eagles, they showed why they're the number one defense in the league with 3 interceptions from Jordan Love in the wild card round. However, offensively, I was expecting a bit more from the Eagles. I will, however, give them the benefit of the doubt. It was the first time Jalen Hurts had played in about a month. And Jalen Hurts, he did manage the game well, at least. 13 for 21, 131 passing yards, 2 touchdown passes. Saquon Barkley, he still had 119 rushing yards on the day. And a lot of people were very upset with Saquon Barkley at the end of the game, where he just slid down instead of trying to score a touchdown, as a lot of people had bet on him to score a touchdown against the Packers last week. And despite what we saw play out in the regular season, where the Eagles won by 17 points, I do think that this is going to be a closer game this time around. As if the Rams defense brings their A game, the Rams are going to be tough to beat given their recent Super Bowl experience. While the Eagles, they have to get A.J. Brown going. Only one catch for 10 yards last week. I do think A.J. Brown does get going in this game. I don't think Saquon Barkley surpasses 255 rushing yards like he did in the regular season matchup. I do think the Rams, they are going to be stacking the box for Saquon Barkley in this game, which I do think it is going to open up A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. So many targets for Jalen Hurts to throw to in this matchup. I think the Eagles, they do get the win. But I am curious to see if the Rams defense will be able to contain Saquon Barkley, because I think they will be trying to stack the box in this game. I think the Eagles, they use their home field advantage to their advantage and they move on. The divisional round concludes with the Ravens and the Bills, and there is a lot of hype surrounding this matchup. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, the two frontrunners for MVP. MVP is down to those two. And this is another rematch from earlier in the season, a rematch from week 4. So very early in the season, the Ravens won with a dominant score of 35-10. And it was one of Josh Allen's worst performances of the entire season. It was a game dominated by Derrick Henry, 24 carries, 199 rushing yards, and a touchdown. And it was the game where the Ravens, they resurfaced as a serious contender, as the Ravens, they had a slow start to the season. They started off 0-2. Then the Ravens, they did start to get better. Then, once again, they lost a game where they should have won. And that's been the case for the Ravens a couple of times in recent years. They've been on the losing end of some games where they should have won. And the big weakness for the Ravens that was talked about throughout the majority of the season was the Ravens' pass defense. But their pass defense, they got better as the season went along. And they only gave up 270 passing yards against the Steelers in the wild card round. I do think this game's going to be much closer than 35-10 because the Bills, they're a much better team now than they were in week 4. Plus the game is in Buffalo this time. For the last 3 years in a row, this has been the part of the season where the Bills' season has come to an end. They've lost in the divisional round 3 years in a row. And in each of those 3 years, there's been talks about, could this be the year where the Bills, they finally take that next step? As when they started this division round defeat win streak, the year before that, they were in the AFC Championship game. Then it was a bad loss to the Chiefs, where it was a dominant game by the Chiefs. And every year since, a loss in the divisional round. For the Bills to win this game, they have to take advantage of being the better defense as far as turnover margin is concerned. They have the best turnover margin in the league, while the Ravens, they have the top run defense in the entire league. So if James Cook can get going, the Bills, they have a chance. A strong chance to win, I should say. And without a doubt, this game's going to be much closer than 35-10. I'd be surprised if it was a runaway game on either side. And there's also a narrative for the Ravens where Lamar Jackson does so well in the regular season, and Lamar Jackson is on the cusp of winning his third league MVP, but he just can't get it done in the playoffs. So this is a matchup between two teams that they're just looking to get to that next step. And whoever loses, they're going to continue on with that narrative going into 2025. And the Bills, I think they'll have a very similar plan like the Rams will this week of stacking the box. As for the Bills to win this game, they have to contain the run. And I really don't think the Bills will be able to do that. I think it's a much closer game than last time week 4, but I still think the Ravens, they do get it done. And that will do it for my divisional round predictions. Comment your predictions down below. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. I did upload my predictions for the national championship game on Monday night. Please give that a listen. Enjoy the games this week. I hope to see you back in the comment section for the championship weekend predictions. And stay tuned for any YouTube Shorts content, as if something happens this week that sticks out to me, I will give a reaction on YouTube Shorts. Until next time, Vegas is always watching.